Good morning, seventh graders. It's a new week, new opportunities, uh, new assignments for social studies, and the third week of our school year. What we're going to focus on this morning is your social studies folder. So if you need to pause this video and go get that folder, we're going to be in it this morning. We're going to fill out another page of notes together, and I'm going to preview some of the things that you're going to be reading and working on this school week. So once you have your folder, I would remind you that there's a previous video on our classroom page that showed you how to take notes along with a video. We did the sixth grade review last week. You find that page right before your world map that were labeled and colored. We talked about religion. We talked about government and how those ancient religions and laws will affect American history and United States history later on. Leafing through your folder then, as you turn the page, you see your world map, hopefully labeled and colored, complete, something that you can use in the future. Turn the page one more time, and we come to a page that looks somewhat like this. At the top of the page, it asks a simple question. What is the difference between prehistory and history? Let's fill out this page together and complete lesson 1 that we started last week. So the difference between prehistory and history is something that's very simple. We know that prehistory existed. We know and we have dated bones, we've dated artifacts that go back well beyond written word. And that's what you have to have in order to have history. So please, right here where there's space, this is something that we want to write in our folder notes. In order to have history, you need writing as evidence that events actually happen. If we don't have any written record, all we can do is take the artifacts and bones that we have and make our best guess of what actually happened. But when we have written evidence, and that may be something as primitive as a painting or a picture on a cave wall, then we have someone who lived during that time's actual account of the events. And so we know that prehistory existed because we have the scientific ability to date things back farther than we know that written word was actually used. So we can write something here like way too large. We have artifacts. And I can put some examples here like tools, bones, prove that events took place before. And that's the key step. That's kind of the first lesson for the morning. The difference of what happened before man began to record events and after. And so I'm going to go back to a slideshow to show you some visuals here just a moment. What you read last week was lesson 1, and the two big concepts that you want to have from that reading are the thoughts of how did early man, long before written word, how did they get from Asia to America? Again, this was prehistoric time. No one wrote a journal about their trip. We cannot go back and read how long or how difficult walking from continent to continent was. So we are taking scientific evidence, we're making our best guess, and scientists believe that one or two possible things took place. The first theory is called the land bridge theory. And this goes back to the time that you and I know as the Ice Age. And it's believed that there was less water on the planet and that man actually walked across an ice bridge from Asia to North America. You have maps on your online textbook that show you very similar scene here. Up here, this body of water today that you would have to cross by boat is called the Bering Strait. But scientists believe that in prehistoric times that this was all frozen or the water had receded to the point that land was visible and they walked. This would not have taken a couple weeks. This would have taken thousands of years, as you read about migration last week. And they would have come and they would have separated and they would have went over all of North America and South America looking for where they would eventually call home. The other theory, not necessarily discussed in your book, but scientists believe that during this time period that there may have been enough land exposed that they actually may have came over here on boat. This is called the coastal route theory. And some believe that similar to the land bridge theory, they would have taken a similar path, but they may have done so on the sea. And so that they would have traveled close to the land along the coast and maybe stopped each evening to rest, regroup, and then go again. And then they would have followed a general course like this until they reached modern Canada, United States, Mexico. Now, some believe that there may have been enough land exposed, that there may have been a whole lot more in the way of islands that were exposed across the Pacific Ocean, and that maybe early man actually had a similar type of ocean voyage where they would have crossed the Pacific Ocean like we would have today, island hopping one island at a time. Again, all of these are just theories. These are based upon our best guess, hoping that uh, we're putting the evidence together to make a good conclusion on what actually took place. So let's go back to our folder. If you've not been following along while I'm talking, let's go ahead and put this information in there so that we have it for future reference. I'm trying to make this a little bit clearer for you to see on the video. So I'm changing things up just a little bit. But let's go ahead and put in a definition for land bridge theory and coastal route theory. So for land bridge, we could write something like it is the belief that Asian tribes crossed the Bering Sea by foot. They walked. Nothing would have been an obstacle for them along their journey. And then the coastal route theory is the belief that Arctic sea voyagers came to America along the Pacific coast. They traveled by boat. They might have probably used small craft like canoes or even rafts. They may have walked along the beaches and pulled their supplies, maybe even young children uh, on the water while they walked on the beach. They transported people and goods by land and sea. By land and sea. All right. Then that brings us to our final definition of the morning. You've been practicing an IXL standard on prehistory, and several of the questions deal with this time period that historians call Neolithic. Neo, new, the new age. Something major is going to take place here that will forever change the course of the events of humans. So, this prehistoric man, they were migrants, they were travelers, they were constantly moving from place to place looking for a better life. Just like many of us move from place to place today, looking for a better job, more money, a bigger home because our families are growing. Some of us leave difficult or dangerous places and look for areas of safety. Nothing's changed. Early man was moving for those same reasons. But this Neolithic revolution is really going to change the need to move. And what the Neolithic, this fancy word, actually means simply is that man learned how to farm. He could grow his own food in his backyard. He knew that this was something that he could do year after year. And that meant he could actually begin to think about staying. He could not have to worry about moving the next week or the next month because he knew he had a food supply. And so this was very important to the development of man, that they could build homes, they could begin to build communities, and towns begin to flourish because people could stay in one area year after year, generation after generation. Man no longer had to wander place to place looking for sources of food. He could make his own food from the seeds that he planted in the ground. This wraps up the lessons that you were reading about last week. This wraps up lesson 1 in our book, the study of prehistoric man. The different ways that we believe they got here to the Western Hemisphere. And the major change in their lives was the discovery of farming, which allows them to begin to build permanent homes for themselves, and they could stay. Towns begin to develop, and they begin to start seeing themselves as a community, not as weary wanderers across the planet Earth. So obviously you're going to have to pause this video several times, make sure that note sheet is complete. I want to point out that the next 2 or 3 pages of your folder look like this. Hopefully these assignments are finished. They were assigned last week. If not, I'd ask that you do that right away. This is a nice summary of lesson 1. Pages 2, 3, and 4 ask you to fill out information while you read. Make sure that you accomplish that. If you leaf through those pages, following that is where we are going to be heading next time as we look at 3 American civilizations: the Aztec, the Mayan, and the Inca. So I'll send out more instructions later in the week on what specific things and tasks I want you to accomplish. But you have these 3 civilizations as part of your IXL standards to do this week. You have lesson 2 in your online textbook that you can begin reading and playing around with those review questions and games. And I'll check back in with you later in the week. If you have any questions on anything old or new for this week, don't hesitate to ask. Stay in the habit of checking in and taking your attendance each morning. And let's get off to a really good start this week, 7th graders. Take care, stay safe. We'll talk to you later.